Yamunatira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Anacharya Yamunatira Anacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanacharya Yamunatira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Shayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Prabhudakacharya Asadhara Sadushi Shiman His Divine Grace Shalasi Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Haribol, glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Agyana Tamanandasya Gananja Salakaya Chaksurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahayam Ati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vrajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakans Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishubhanu Siddhadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I believe we're reading from the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the most confidential knowledge, text number 8. Prakṛtim svām avaṣṭabhya visṛjāmi punaḥ bhūta-grāmam imam kṛtsnam avaśaṁ prakṛter vaśāt prakṛtim svām avaṣṭabhya visṛjāmi punaḥ bhūta-grāmam imam kṛtsnam avaśaṁ prakṛter vaśāt.
prakṛtim svām avaṣṭabhya visṛjāmi punaḥ bhūta-grāmam imam kṛtsnam avaśaṁ prakṛteḥ vaśāt.
prakṛtim svām avaṣṭabhya visṛjāmi punaḥ
bhūta-grāmam imam kṛtsnam
avaśaṁ prakṛter vaśāt.
avaśaṁ prakṛteḥ vaśāt.
Ladies?
prakṛtim svām avaṣṭabhya
prakṛtim svām avaṣṭabhya
visṛjāmi punaḥ
visṛjāmi punaḥ
bhūta-grāmam imam kṛtsnam
bhūta-grāmam imam kṛtsnam
avaśaṁ prakṛter vaśāt.
Avaśaṁ prakṛter vaśāt. Ladies? Prakṛtim svām avaṣṭabhya visṛjāmi punaḥ bhūta-grāmam imam kṛtsnam avaśaṁ prakṛter vaśāt. Prakṛtim svām avaṣṭabhya visṛjāmi punaḥ bhūta-grāmam imam kṛtsnam avaśaṁ prakṛter vaśāt. Prakṛtim, the material nature, svām, of my personal self, avaṣṭabhya, entering into, visṛjāmi, I create, punaḥ, again and again, bhūta-grāmam, all the cosmic manifestations, imam, these, kṛtsnam, in total, avaśam, automatically, prakṛteḥ, of the force of nature, vaśāt, under obligation. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. Please repeat. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. Purport. This material world is the manifestation of the inferior energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This has already been explained several times. At the creation, the material energy is let loose as the mahat-tattva, into which the Lord as his first puruṣa incarnation, Mahā-viṣṇu, enters. He lies within the Causal Ocean and breathes out innumerable universes. And into each universe the Lord again enters as Garbhodaka-śāyī Viṣṇu. Each universe is in that way created. He still further manifests himself as Kṣīrodaka-śāyī Viṣṇu, and that Viṣṇu enters into everything, even into the minute atom. This fact is explained here. He enters into everything. Now, as far as the living entity is concerned, they're impregnated into this material nature. As a result of their past deeds, they take different positions. Thus, the activities of this material world begin. The activities of the different species of living beings are begun from the very moment of the creation. It is not that all is evolved. The different species of life are created immediately along with the universe. Men, animals, beasts, birds, everything is simultaneously created, because whatever desires the living entities had at the last annihilation are again manifested. It's clearly indicated here by the word avaśaṁ that the living entities have nothing to do with this process. The state of being in their past life, in the past creation, is simply manifested again. And all this is done simply by his will. This is the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And after creating different species of life, he has no connection with them. The creation takes place to accommodate the inclinations of the various living entities, and so the Lord does not become involved in it. So the verse again. Prakṛtim svām avaṣṭabhya visṛjāmi punaḥ bhūta-grāmam imam kṛtsnam avaśam prakṛter vaśāt. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will it is automatically manifested again and again. Under my will it is annihilated at the end. Get some fresh water. Namaviṣṇu Vidaya Krishna Prasthāya Bhutaya Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswatim Deve Gauravani Vacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Siddharade. For most of us, what's being described is inconceivable. In other words, it's beyond our present perception. We cannot at the present moment see Krishna entering as Mahā-viṣṇu into the creation, nor can we perceive the mahat-tattva before the creation. What to speak of becoming Paramatma or Kṣīrodaka-śāyī Viṣṇu and entering into all the atoms. But we have two ways of looking at it. One from the point of view is that Bhagavad Gita describes what's within our perception, and we can see that as science, and it prescribes what was beyond our perception, which we have to take on faith. In other words, we can only perceive with our intelligence a certain amount of reality, but that's sufficient to let us know that the reality that's spoken in Bhagavad Gita is absolute, while all other knowledge is all inaccurate from the point of view of eternity, not from the point of view of materialism. For instance, in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada explains that the Bhagavad Gita is about that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The whole idea of Krishna speaking the Bhagavad Gita was not to sell the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, but to convince Arjuna that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. was asking about was stating, why did Prabhupada write a Bhagavad Gita? There are 700 editions of the Bhagavad Gita at the time when Prabhupada wrote the Bhagavad Gita. So what was the necessity of writing another one? And he explains that all the other Bhagavad Gitas that he knew about in English, they were all, didn't touch on the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita. That Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the implications, what that means. In other words, there are different types of knowledge. Ultimately, real knowledge or absolute knowledge is Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And that's what Bhagavad Gita concerns, principally. Although there are 5 topics of the Bhagavad Gita, such as Ishvara, or Bhagavan, or Paramatma, and Jiva, Brahman. And then there's also the manifestations of Krishna, of Brahman, such as Prakriti and Kala, and Karma. So those are the 5 principal subject matters of Bhagavad Gita, but ultimately they're meant to evolve our consciousness to the point where we can perceive Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. That's all Bhagavad Gita really deals with. All other kinds of knowledge are not very significant compared to the eternal knowledge of Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. We may become very learned in different types of materialistic knowledge, even Vedic knowledge, but if we don't understand Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, then we're just wasting our time. There may be knowledge such as Jyotirveda or Ayurveda, which may support the understanding of Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, but they certainly don't substitute for it. So Prabhupada said, all these Bhagavad Gitas, they don't touch, that he knew about, they didn't touch the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because all knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma, they culminate in understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is tu Bhagavan svām. And if Prabhupada says, if we want to take a medicine, we have to take it according to the label on the bottle, or according to the expert physician. We can't take it according to the whims of a friend, or our own imagination. So similarly, Bhagavad Gita has to be taken from the authorities, such as the Brahma Samhita, which proclaim Krishna as God, and other Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, or the great sages such as Lord Chaitanya, or Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, and even Sankaracharya has proclaimed that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we receive the knowledge through parampara, through a line of teachers who help us understand that each one of us have an eternal relationship with Krishna. And if we use our intelligence, then we can begin to perceive that relationship. In other words, Bhagavad Gita or any Vedic literature is not just meant for theoretical study, to memorize something, or to show how erudite we are. It's meant for practical realization of Krishna. And Krishna means Krishna and all his energies. That is what our practical relationship is with all living entities, not only being a manifestation of Krishna and his energies. Our understanding of Krishna cannot be separated from understanding everything in relationship to Krishna, because Krishna is the ultimate absolute truth and the source of everything. So in one sense, everything is simultaneously one and different from Krishna. Therefore, if we understand Krishna, we'll automatically understand Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. But we should also try to understand Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan as our guides to ultimately understanding and accepting Krishna. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that this knowledge comes in disciple succession, and we're supposed to hear it from self-realized persons who have realized Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In other words, they may not be expert kirtan leaders, they may not even be erudite scholars from the material point of view, but if they've understood Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, then they're giving us the most essential knowledge. We don't have to know everything, we have to understand what's important. Because each one of us, we have an eternal relation with Krishna in one of 5 rasas. And therefore the actual important thing of our life is to find out who we actually are. That's when human life begins, atarto brahma jignasya, to find out what is reality and what is not reality. And why am I suffering? These are intelligent questions. What is the truth, and why am I suffering? No one wants to suffer. Everyone wants to be happy eternally. So why am I a spiritual being in material existence? Why have I been put here? And what am I supposed to learn so that I stop my suffering? Everything else is a waste of time. Now, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says this knowledge comes down through a chain of teachers, but he also says, Saevayam mayatedya yogo prokta pratana bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasam hietarutamam. That he was speaking to Arjuna this knowledge because he has 2 qualifications. He is Krishna's devotee and his friend. So although at this present time, in our conditioned state, we cannot perceive Krishna as he actually is, in full, we can't see his unlimited beauty, which is the definition of God. God must have everything, but incomplete, including beauty and wealth and strength and fame and renunciation and knowledge. Now, since we can't perceive 5 of those things with our present senses, but with our intelligence we can begin to perceive knowledge. So therefore Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gita, because that's our access to him. In other words, by hearing Bhagavad Gita, we can learn how to utilize this body, our mind, and our words, and other things such as faith and refuge, so that Krishna will reveal himself to us. Now, at the beginning, we don't know Krishna. Matter of fact, we don't even know who we are. We don't even know that we don't know who we are. But we think we know everything, which is a big qualification to find out something. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita is best accepted by a person who has the same qualities as Arjuna. Namely, he's at least friendly to Krishna, and he's trying to become Krishna's devotee. Otherwise, Bhagavad Gita is a waste of time. If we don't have that preliminary faith that at least theoretically Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then Bhagavad Gita will have no real meaning to us. If we can't accept theoretically that Krishna might be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although we don't have to blindly accept it and we don't have to blindly reject it, it's just an opportunity to find out how we can realize Krishna. Now, here it explains how the universe has been created from the mahat-tattva of the universes, and this is very much different from modern so-called science. Now, it's up to us to utilize our intelligence and to see whether we're going to accept modern science, which leads to materialism, that everything came out of nothing, and therefore there's no purpose to the creation. The only direct purpose we can perceive is to gratify our senses by eating, sleeping, mating, defending. That's our most important thing in our conditioned life, is to make sure we get enough of eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So that's all based upon the fact that we identify ourselves with the body. But if we're not the body, if the universe didn't come out of nothing, if there's actually a person behind everything, if there's actually karma and laws of material nature, then our idea of accepting materialistic conceptions of life are actually just a waste of time. In other words, if we believe that in the beginning there was nothing, and then nothing decided to become something for some reason or another, because nothing was good for nothing, so he decided to become something. And so he tried very hard for a long, long time to become something, and according to the scientist so-called theory, after a lot of effort, because if you're nothing, you're good for nothing. So all you can do is become some gas, etc. And I guess Mother Nothing complained that you're still good for nothing. And so he became angry and exploded, flew everywhere for unlimited time, and Mother Nothing said, why don't you just settle down? Try to become something. And here we are now. The old story of how we all evolved from the apes, who evolved from nothing. And therefore, we don't really have to worry about karma, we don't have to worry about God, because there is no God. The Supreme was nothing, and he was good for nothing. And ultimately this life is good for nothing. So we don't have to worry about anything. But if that was true, then we should see, when we turn our family album to see all our relatives, that there is mother and father on the first page, and then there is grandfather and grandmother, and we keep on turning the page, and turning the page, and great-great-grandfather, great-great-grandmother, and finally we turn the page, and there is a monkey swinging from a tree. Grandfather Harry, just full of hair, with a big grin on his face, and Grandmother Lucy. And we keep on turning the page and turning the page, and finally we come to the black sheep in our family that everyone talks about, the black sheep. We keep on turning the page, and finally we get to great-grandfather Squeaky, the mouse. The cutest member of our family. And finally we get to almost the last page, and there's a rock. And a little caption, the most solid member of the family. And we turn the page and there's nothing. That's where we all came from. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Why does not more things come out of nothing? Because there's not much, there's not much room in nothing to do much more. I mean, the fact that he was nothing, was able to create all these universes, at least this universe and all of us, that's pretty something. So nothing retired after doing this amazing thing out of nothing. Could you imagine becoming a millionaire out of nothing? Just like the scientists say that everything came out of nothing. All by chance. So if everything came out of nothing by chance, why do they go to the university to study, to get their PhD degree? If they really have faith and everything came out of nothing, why don't they stay at home and out of nothing they'll get their degree? Why do they work so hard for it? If everything can come out of nothing, why can't their PhD come out of nothing? Why do they work so hard to become rich? Why don't they just, out of nothing, they can become rich? So, actually, it's not a very sane idea that we became persons out of nothing, and that the original source of everything was nothing. No, if where in our family we find nothing, everyone is a person in our family. Now, at the beginning, Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gita, but he doesn't tell Arjuna right away that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He first introduced the fact that all of us are eternal. Therefore he says, Denosmi nitā dehe, kaumaram yovanam jara, tata dahantara praptira, diryas tatra namuyate. He says that our bodies are changing. Now anyone who doesn't believe that their bodies are changing, then Bhagavad Gita will make absolutely no sense to them, because they have absolutely no sense themselves. In other words, the most obvious thing in our existence is that our body's changing. And it's not growing younger. And if we deny that and say, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that my body's changing. I have exactly the same body I had when I was 3 years old, or when I was in the womb of my mother. There's absolutely no difference between it. And if someone shows you your baby picture, you say, see, I'm exactly like the same, that baby picture. So such people, it's not really very easy to convince them that their bodies are changing, because they have no intelligence, the most obvious thing in their existence. On the other hand, if we can't remember that we had a 5-year-old body, and we thought we were that 5-year-old body, well, where's the 5-year-old body now? It's completely disappeared. And similarly, we have this body now, and we're thinking we're this body. But this body will also disappear, along with all its designations eventually. So it's a false conception. A matter of fact, we're living in simply false conceptions. That I'm an American, I'm Indian, I'm white, I'm black, I'm a woman, I'm a man. We're none of these things. We're the soul within the body, the unchanging soul. So this is Krishna's first instruction. And if we can't understand that, then we're not even a human being. What to speak of making spiritual progress? Even Hiranyakashipu understood that he was not the body. The biggest demon that existed, he believed that he was a soul. And as a matter of fact, after the death of his brother Hiranyaksha, another big demon, he preached to all his relatives that Hiranyaksha was not his body, that he's also eternally existing. So even the demons understand that. So if we can't understand that, then we're not even on the level of the demons. Now, the next level of understanding that Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita is Paramatma. The question is, why is it that the eternal soul is now imprisoned in a temporary body that's constantly changing, and changing in a way that none of us would really like it to change? In other words, no one is looking forward to leaving this body, which is an inevitable consequence of old age and disease. No one is looking forward to their happy death day. We sing happy birthday, but no one sings happy death day to you, happy death day to you. No one is looking forward to their death day. But we can't avoid it. As soon as we get a body, we may imagine ourselves to be eternal in this body, but it doesn't work. Very quickly the body changes and we have to take another one. We may deny it, just like an ostrich has a huge body and a little head. And when it's attacked by an animal, the ostrich puts its head into the ground, into a hole. And now it believes that it's safe because it can't see its enemy. Although this huge body is still outside the hole, it's imagining that the little head is inside the hole and therefore it's safe. Similarly, when a rabbit is cornered and attacked by its enemy, it closes its eyes and keeps on thinking, it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. But its enemy, the wolf, is going to eat the rabbit anyhow. So modern civilizations attempt to deny the obvious, that the body is changing, and it's changing towards the inevitable death of the body. Of course, the body is dead all the time. It's only due to the fact that the soul is inside the body that appears to be alive. But the body's always dead, so something that's dead can't die. As a matter of fact, the body is changing at every moment. But the soul, ourselves within the body, we're eternal. And we can perceive that if we have enough intelligence. In other words, I'm sure everyone came here, they weren't intoxicated. Because otherwise, if one is intoxicated, it's very difficult to understand even this basic philosophy. But the whole world is intoxicated, literally intoxicated, either by physically intoxicated or intoxicated by lust, anger, and greed. And therefore, out of lust, one's intelligence and greed and anger, their intelligence has been taken away, and it's very hard for them to understand what Bhagavad Gita is all about. That it's meant to liberate us from the material concept of life so that we can at least become eternal, realize our eternality. And if we realize we're eternal, then we have no more anxiety, no more fear. And as long as we have fear and anxiety, we must suffer in this material world. Now, how do we come to this understanding? By the help of Krishna within our heart. In other words, to realize Krishna in our heart is not very difficult. As to realize we're not this body, for one who has intelligence, is also not difficult. Otherwise, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, as he said we're not the body and we can perceive that as eternal truth, he also says right now, each one of us, Krishna is in our heart, giving us remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Now, whatever we're perceiving right now is because Krishna is giving us that intelligence to see things in a certain way. Not everyone has the same intelligence we have, and therefore when people get some disease called Alzheimer's, or whatever disease it may be, they can't remember anything, nor do they perceive things properly. They can't remember who their mother was, or who their father is, or who their children are. They can't remember anything. So remembrance is not just automatic. We weren't born knowing everything. Nor do we leave this body knowing exactly what we knew when we were born. So there's someone providing each one of us with knowledge. So we can say these are women, these are men, we're in Vrindavan right now. That's called remembrance. And we can see a picture of Krishna and Balaram and say, oh, that's Krishna and Balaram. So that's knowledge, which is also based on memory. But also forgetfulness. We may try and remember someone's name, and it's on the tip of our tongue, so to speak, but we can't remember the name. And then suddenly it pops into our mind. So how can we say we're in control of our memory? Otherwise, we'd remember everything that we ever heard. That might not be a good idea, because sometimes we're trying to forget something, we can't do it. I hate this person, I hate this person. And it gives us pain thinking about how we hate them, but we can't stop hating them. And we're trying to remember someone's name. We can't remember their name. Just like one man was talking to another man about this wonderful restaurant he went yesterday with his wife. And his wife and the other man's wife was cooking in the kitchen. So the man said, I just can't remember the name of the restaurant. Maybe you can give me a hint, and then I can remember it. So the man says, yes, what kind of hint? So he said, it's something like, it's a flower, and it's red, and it smells really nice. So the man said, Rose. That's right. Rose. Rose, what was the name of that restaurant we went to yesterday? So remembrance is not an automatic. That's being supplied to each one of us. Just like a little ant crawling on the ground, looking for some sugar. So Krishna is in its heart telling him where the sugar is, And he knows better than we are. He can find the sweets quicker than we can. So he's more intelligent than we are when it comes to finding sweets. So how can we say that in the body of the ant, there's not a soul, and there's not a super soul guiding him, giving him remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness? So that's perceivable with our present intelligence. With our intelligence, we can perceive that we're being guided by the super soul. The question is, what kind of guidance we want? For those who are materialists, Krishna gives them the intelligence to make money, to find something to eat, etc., to fulfill their materialistic desires. He provides that kind of intelligence. And that kind of intelligence covers one's intelligence, really. It's a covering over one's real intelligence and misdirects the soul towards materialistic objectives. And the result is he winds up in another body, constantly trying to fulfill his materialistic objectives, trying to make arrangements so he can be happily eat, sleep, mate, and defend in some part of the material existence. Or if one wants spiritual intelligence, then one should know what the spiritual goal is. It's not only to realize we're not this body, because otherwise what do you do as a spirit soul? Float in the spiritual sky somewhere, in Brahman? No, the goal is Paramatma can guide us towards Bhagavan, who's the source of everything, who's actually the source of Paramatma also. That God is not simply in the material world to fulfill our material desires, directing us to fulfill our material desires, but He's ultimately supposed to be directing us towards realizing our spiritual goals of life. And that ultimately is Bhagavan. So here it mentions the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Lord. So we think Krishna is someone like us, and therefore how can he create a universe just by his breathing? How can he manifest universes and then annihilate them? How is this possible? Then it means that we're simply under the influence of the illusory energy. Because otherwise, where did the universe come from if it wasn't manifested by someone? If it just came out of nothing, why so much intelligence? How many things do you know of that are not directed by intelligence create planets moving their orbit exactly on time? Why does the sun come up exactly on time and go down exactly at a prescribed time? Why are snowflakes falling in precise geometric patterns with no two snowflakes being exactly the same? Why is it that we can eat food and it becomes digested, the important parts are assimilated into the body, and the unnecessary parts are eliminated? Who's created such a wonderful machine? Could the scientists create a wonderful machine like that? Can the scientists create a male machine and a female machine, and when they get together they make little machines? Can any scientist do that? Can they create a male Rolls Royce and a female's Rolls Royce, and when the two Rolls Royces come together they make little Rolls Royces? And then everyone can get a Rolls Royce if you give it enough gasoline and oil? No, the scientists can't do that, but Krishna has done that in 8,400,000 species of life. So unless we can see with our intelligence what's before us, then we'll think that it's just by accident the sun is moving in an orbit. We'll think it's by accident that living entities are duplicating in 8,400,000 species of life. We'll think it's an accident that when we eat food, it gets digested, it gets assimilated, and unnecessary parts are eliminated. Although there's no scientist can create such a machine that you put grass in one end and the other end you get milk. But Krishna, the supreme scientist, created that machine called the cow. You put grass in one end and the other end you get milk. So unless we can recognize the existence of a supreme scientist who's created such a wonderful existence that we're living in, and understand what the purpose of this existence is, to first of all recognize him, and then follow his instructions to get out of this entanglement of material existence, and ultimately to realize our relationship with him. We have a relationship now, he's guiding us, but we have to be careful what we want. If we want to enjoy this material nature in some way, he'll guide us in so many different types of enjoyment. And if we want to get out of this material existence, then he's given us the formula. Chanting Hare Krishna, for instance, as Srila Prabhupada has given us as his representative, chanting Hare Krishna in the morning and the evening, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, hearing about the glories of Krishna and his devotees, worshipping Krishna in the form of the deities, serving the devotees of Krishna, and trying to put Krishna in our heart and make this atmosphere spiritual in our own existence and in the existence of others. So Krishna has given us a method of realizing him, and the question is whether we want to take that method or we want to do something else. We want to play games, we want to play sports, we want to go to the movies and imagine that we're Romeo or Juliet or Tarzan or Jane or Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse. We can imagine whatever we want to in the material world. And we'll get the opportunity to play that part too. As I said before, when Prabhupada was coming back from an engagement, from his doctor's appointment in Los Angeles, then he came back and he saw a billboard for a movie. And the title of the movie was, "Is There Sex After Death?" So Prabhupada came back and gave a lecture that day in Los Angeles Temple, and he mentioned that he had saw the title of the movie, "Is There Sex After Death?" And since the devotees were going to go out and preach that day, distribute books and meet people, he said, when you go out today and meet these people on the street, you should assure them that they don't have to worry, that there is sex after death, and 8,400,000 species of life. And if they hear that, they won't be in anxiety about death anymore. So in the material world, everyone is trying to be happy, in some, especially culminating in romance and love, so-called love in the material world, which must have, which is a reflection of the relationship that Krishna has with his devotees. And therefore there is some kind of satisfaction in material existence that I become Romeo or Juliet or whatever else we're imagining ourselves to be, and every species of life. The mouse in the hole is also in love with his wife. He's also attached to his children. He also loves whenever he gets some prasadam. But he won't understand Krishna. He won't get out of the material entanglement. That's only possible in the human form of life. So while we're struggling here to maintain this body, because we need a material body for self-realization, while we're struggling and trying to maintain this body in the best way possible, at the same time one has to cultivate spiritual knowledge, ultimately leading us out of this false identification with our gross and subtle material body, being directed by Paramatma towards spiritual life, chanting Hare Krishna, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, worshipping the deities, trying to make the atmosphere spiritual, especially by becoming conscious of Krishna. So while we're struggling, that we should also try to help the soul. Just like everyone usually eats once or twice a day. Isn't that right? Anyone here only eat once a week? Or once every Janmashtami? Or maybe Janmashtami and Gurpurnima. So similarly, the soul also needs food, spiritual food. Not only once a week we hear about Krishna, It needs to hear about Krishna every day. It needs to perform devotional activities every day, or else the soul will starve spiritually. And if we perform these activities, then gradually we'll understand things more clearly, things will become simpler, we'll understand what the goal of our life is, and we won't become distracted by all the problems of modern society. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much. Any questions? Modern society has utilized its intelligence to create confusion. Just like a Brahmin he only had one pair of underwear. But he was a very pious person. He used to be happy, satisfied with his underwear. But one day he was bathed in the Ganges, and he put his underwear on to dry on the bank of the Ganges. But a mouse came and stole his underwear. So he was quite embarrassed. So he begged another piece of underwear, but he couldn't sleep at night thinking of mice, how they might steal his underwear. So he heard that cats can protect underwear from mice. So he got a cat. But the cat wanted milk. And he found out that cows give milk. So he got a cow. So now he had a cow and a cat in order to protect his underwear. But the cow needed someone to milk. Someone had to milk the cow, so he got a wife. But the wife wanted some children, so he had to get a house. But to pay for the house, he had to get a job. But to go to the job, he needed a car. To pay for the car, he had to work at night. So now he had 2 jobs, a car, a house, a wife, 2 children, a cow, and a cat to protect his underwear. So he realized this was not going to, eventually he would have to renounce his underwear because he wouldn't be able to support it. So he took his underwear off and walked away. So that's modern society. They decided that they'd make their lives easy. They'd eat the animals that they had previously had been working for them. So they decided to eat the cow and the bull. But then in order to maintain the cow and the bull and to get their own food, they had to invent the tractor. But to make a tractor, they had to get a factory. But to get the factory, they had to get the raw materials. And to get the raw materials, they had to build other machines to get the raw materials out of the earth. And then they had to get transportation to bring them to the factories to manufacture the tractors, so the tractors could produce the food, and then the food would have to be transported and manufactured, would have to be processed and manufactured and transported into supermarkets. And people needed cars to go to the supermarkets. In order to get all the fuel to maintain the factories, they had to build boats and other factories. And they had to build armies to get donations of to get the materials from countries that didn't want to donate their material. They needed armies. And this way, societies become more and more complicated. And they're proud of it. So-called scientific advancement all culminates in just getting something to eat. But they made it so complicated. And they think this is progress. But eventually, they'll run out of energy, they'll run out of factories, they'll run out of everything, and then in the Kali Yuga, they'll be forced to eat each other because they never maintained or protected the cow and the bull. The cow and the bull, they can easily plow the land, they supply the fertilizer. You don't need artificial fertilizer, you don't need insecticide or herbicide or peoplecides. You just need cow dung and cow urine. They plow the land, you throw the few seeds in, and then you get all what you need. Nice milk products, nice food, organic, then you don't pollute the air, you don't pollute the water, you don't pollute the food, you don't pollute people's minds, and people can live peacefully and develop their Krishna consciousness. But in the absence of experiencing the love for Krishna and his devotees, experiencing a higher state of consciousness, people will become of a lower nature, and therefore they're simply envious of each other, competing to become the supreme in the material world, and that's the only satisfaction they hardly get. They can hardly get any satisfaction, struggling against the material nature to achieve some kind of status in the material world, which is taken away. And all they get is, they bring with them after leaving the body, is their karma for trying to exploit the material nature and forgetting Krishna. So I'll stop there again. Any questions or comments? All right, we'll stop there. Thank you very much. Grandhara Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.